Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's episode of Talking Elite. I am your host, Adam Gillespie. Please excuse my voice. I'm a little scratchy tonight, but that's okay. We're going to go over a very special topic. I'm going to get us started here tonight. We may have people pop in. We may people not. Who knows? If you guys got stuff in the comments, you guys can drop them here as well. But tonight's topic, we are going to start with women's professional wrestling. That's what we're going to be discussing tonight. I think it's very important. I think a lot of you guys know that I'm very keen and very adamant about the state of women's pro wrestling, and that it needs to be a little more, out there, a little more booked well. I've said it numerous times. I think right now the best women's division booked right now is TNA. But we want to talk about that. But before we get to that, I want to go over last night's episode of Dynamite. I got to watch a little bit of it. I don't know if you guys got to watch a little bit of it, but if you did, leave a comment. We'd love to hear what you guys thought of it. But I thought it was okay. Thought it had some moments. Really great to see Will Ospreay on TV winning some big matches. Didn't understand the concept of the Casino Battle Royal being on Dynamite last night, but I guess it happened. But him winning it and then earning a spot to go against Roderick Strong for the International Championship at Double or Nothing, I think that's a cool idea. Now it's his first title, challenge in AEW since he came over as a full-timer. He's racking up the wins. Will he win it? I don't know. It's very hard to say. I guess we'll have to see when the pay-per-view comes, but I guess we got to stick around and see how that works. Also, I guess they're booking this whole thing with Thunder Rosa and Deonna Purrazzo. I know I had mentioned it that they're maybe turning Deonna heel. That's the story I'm hearing they're trying to do, but we'll see how it goes. Also, last night, you had Swerve Strickland kind of on a weird spot on the card last night on Dynamite. He was kind of at the beginning, kind of doing the Eliminator. And so the problem with that is he's your champion. And he should probably be main eventing your program if that's what you want to build. So I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on that. Should Swerve Strickland, be headlining Dynamite as your champion? In my opinion, that's what it was back in the day, where every champion in any promotion, WCW, ECW, WWF in the old days, your champion was on last on your program, on Monday Night Raw, on WCW Nitro, on ECW television. Your champion was always the last segment. So I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on that. But let's talk about that segment, the main segment of last night of Dynamite. You finally had Tony Khan. Tony Khan stepping into more of a predominant on-screen role. He's usually on screen talking about big announcements coming on or, showing the footage. He's more of like a backstage kind of camera guy. And he usually comes out and makes some announcements. I mean, he came out and when he announced he purchased Ring of Honor. But last night was a crazy segment because he was more of a predominant on-screen presence. You saw little peeks of it, of, the one episode where the Young Bucks are standing next to him and they said, this, and they'd walk out with him, doing their music. But last night you had Jack Perry reinstated, gut punch Tony Khan. And then you had the Young Bucks and Okada. Very NWO of the segment last night, obviously. So very, very NWO-esque of the segment. And I don't know how I feel about it, but it's interesting. Now there's some more to it. And actually his father showed up. Shad Khan, I think I'm saying his name right, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Fulham FC, and the football club. He shows up as the show's going off air. So it's really weird. You're getting some crazy storyline. They did announce that Kenny Omega will be coming back next Wednesday. Now, if it's just a one-time appearance until he's fully ready to go, we don't know. But I want to get your guys' thoughts in the comments. What did you think of Dynamite last night? Between the whole and also the best friends. Now we got a parking lot brawl set up between Trent Beretta, Chuck E. Cheese. So I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on last night's Dynamite and what you thought of all these segments, and mainly the main event segment of the Elite attacking Tony Khan. It is very Attitude Era-esque of Vince McMahon or an Eric Bischoff, Nitro kind of NWO attacking them. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on that because I thought it was entertaining. You got a story going there. So, I mean, that's the one thing I always just want to know what you guys thought. So, as we leave Dynamite, let's move on to tonight's topic. Tonight's topic is women's wrestling. Now, like I said, when we started this, I think a lot of you guys are aware that I am adamant about women's wrestling. I want it to be great. I want women's wrestling to be on almost the same level as the men's. It's almost like, hey, women wrestlers can do just as much craziness as the men's wrestlers. And I mean, we're seeing it a lot. AEW with all these street fights with all the women. You know, you just had that crazy tag team street fight with Chris and Willow against Sky and Julia. I mean, we've seen numerous women's matches of hardcore street fights, all this stuff. So, but my main thing is about where they're standing now and how far we've come from where we started with women wrestling to where we are now, because we got to go back through the golden age. If any of you guys have watched our WrestleMania videos, you know we covered a lot of the WrestleManias, and a lot of women were not on a lot of those cards. You know, I mean, obviously you had Wendy Richter and, you know, I think it was Fabulous Moolah. I can't remember, but it was, you know, Wendy Richter was on one of those cards. It was a big one. Then you got towards like the teens, the WrestleMania teens, like 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. You started seeing more women matches on there. So going back, you kind of go back to the golden age, kind of the golden age of the Fabulous Moolah, Mae Young. You go back to that age of where women were, and it was very hard for them to get on the same card and level as men professional wrestlers. As the documentary Dark Side of the Ring, Dark Side of the Ring had an episode about Fabulous Moolah, and they had mentioned on that episode that it was very hard for women to get on a wrestling card, mainly because women were seen as almost like a special attraction on a pro wrestling card. You never really saw a women's match on a pro wrestling card in any of the territories. They were more of like a special attraction. And, you know, we see it today. They're more of... they're more shown. Jason, thank you for joining me. Thank you. Yeah, no, wow. I mean, I went back, watched the documentary of Glow, Jason, and I tell you, if you have not seen the documentary about Glow and you're just known about the Netflix series, go and watch the documentary because it is awesome. So, but WoW is kind of like the stem from Glow. You know, it's instead of gorgeous ladies are wrestling, it's just women are wrestling, you know, so loved it. But Jason, thank you for noticing that. Thank you for joining me, bud. But going back, like women back then in like the golden age of wrestling were shown as more of an attraction. You know, they weren't seen as main eventers or main points on the card. They were more seen as this is special. It's almost like, and I hate to use a word, little people. I'll say little people. I won't, even though it's midget, I will say little people. Let's see. Jason, you said, I recently watched WoW on CW, Aku's Daughters song. They are on there, yes. And if anyone's familiar with Haku's Daughters, the Tonga twins, I think Haku's son is now in WWE, Tama Tonga. So his kids are just everywhere in pro wrestling. So, and then seeing his daughters on there, really cool. So, and I believe, Jason, if they're still there, it's Haley J and her mom from OVW are still doing stuff over there in WoW, which is really cool. But going back to, you know, women in general in wrestling being the attraction, it's like little people. It's like the midget wrestling. That was a special attraction back then. You know, a lot of people were more paying to see the bigger names, you know, like the Buddy Rogers, you know, like the Bruno Sammartinos and all that stuff. And so women didn't really come to the forefront until like someone like a Fabulous Moolah and a Mae Young kind of stepped in and said, "Hey, we can do more than that. We can be more than a special attraction. We can actually sell tickets for you guys." And if you watch that Dark Side of the Ring, those women wrestlers talk about that. Even though there were some that had some bad feelings about Moolah and some that respected her, she figured out a way for the women to make good money doing this professional wrestling, booking with these certain bookers, and all around making people watch the product, and buying tickets to these territories. And then you fast forward to the 80s. In the 80s, Moolah and Mae Young were still around, but then you get to wrestlers like Rockin' Robin, Wendy Richter, so you get to all these people, and I believe that's when, Alonda Blaze kind of debuted, was in the mid to late 80s. But you get to these wrestlers, and they started having matches. Were they long matches? No, but they were featured. So you start getting to the 80s, and women wrestlers are still starting to get to the forefront. Like I mentioned before, you had that WrestleMania match with Wendy Richter, and I believe it was Fabulous Moolah. I'm pretty sure that's who she beat at WrestleMania. Don't quote me on that, but I believe so. I'm like 99% sure. But you had that happen, and it's one of the biggest spectacles, WrestleMania. And again, if you guys haven't seen those videos, please highly recommend you guys go back, watch all those videos, enjoy them. We talk about every WrestleMania that led up to this year's WrestleMania 40. So with that, we get to the 90s. Now, women wrestlers in the 90s, they were more seen as the pretty face and the valet for the men going to the ring. You have the women of like Sunny and Sable and China, so and I'll bring that name up again, don't worry. But you bring these women up in the 90s, they became more valet than professional wrestlers. And even in ECW, I'm a big ECW guy, if anybody knows. And let me see, Oliver, thank you for joining. Oliver says, I remember watching the Glamour Girls years ago in the 1990s something. The Glamour Girls, yeah. Oliver, was that Glow, or was that WoW branched off from Glow? You're saying the 80s. Okay, so yeah. So those are kind of like, that's kind of like the Glow kind of stuff, the Glow era, when it kind of went into that, I believe Glow was from 1986 or 7 to like 1992, 1991. I know they only lasted like 5 years, which was bad because they were starting to get to their peak. And this, they were in WWF and a little in the Glow. Thank you, Oliver. I appreciate that. Yeah, because Glow kind of took off and kind of made it cool, made it like almost like a drama series of women's professional wrestling. They only lasted 5 years, which was crazy because if you watch the documentary of Glow, they started reaching their peak in like 1990 and 91, and that's when they called it. So if you haven't seen Glow, the documentary, highly recommend it. But getting back to the 90s, 90s, we started seeing the women as valets. You never saw them in the ring. And I was talking about ECW. ECW, obviously being the extreme professional wrestling. Corin, Jimmy Hart managed them, I believe. Jimmy Hart didn't manage many women. That's true. Jimmy Hart, I do remember now. Jimmy Hart did manage a women's team. I just couldn't remember them. And Oliver said the Glamour Girls. So thank you. Now I put two and two together. So yes, Jimmy Hart. Again, love that man. Love to meet him someday and just blow on the megaphone. That sounded weird. Don't quote me on that. But going back, ECW, the girls were more, it was more extreme. Haha, extreme. Yeah, Oliver, he did manage pretty much everybody. Him and Bobby the Brain Heenan, they both managed freaking everybody. And if you guys want, I believe it's still up there, and I believe we did it. We did an episode on managers. So we talk about all these managers of professional wrestling. So you guys definitely got to check out that episode, Talking Elite. It's up there on our YouTube page. Great stuff. But, in ECW, the women were a little more scandalous. They had crazier name, Beulah McGillicuddy, but There was one woman wrestler, and I want you guys to think if you remember this girl in ECW, Kimono Wanalea. Yes, that was her real name in the promotion, Kimono Wanalea. And they did this little twist of her having the throuple, if people know that is, with Tommy Dreamer and Balula. And that's the best thing. It was just drama, and that's what Glow was, and that's what ECW did. I mean, WCW, you had the girl, you had Tori Wilson, you had all of them, you had the Nitro girls, but they really weren't on the forefront of performing on TV. Not until you got, Medusa over there, and I want to say she wrestled Bull Nakano in WCW. They had a long rivalry, and we actually talked about this on an episode here on Talking Elite about that rivalry. And they actually expanded from WWF into WCW, that rivalry. And they put on some good matches, those two. They put on the forefront for WCW. I mean, I think a lot of their matches were really good in WCW. Just wish they had more time. So, but then you move in a little late into the 90s, and you have someone like Chyna come in. Now, Chyna, there's a reason why they called her the ninth wonder of the world. Excuse me. They called her the ninth wonder of the world because she was something different. She came in. Chyna changed the whole game. Corin, yes. Francine, Dawn Marie, and Miss Hyatt. Yeah, she was there for a little bit. Francine, I do remember, I think Francine and Balula had a good feud because their two core groups were kind of bickering over each other. So they kind of had a feud going because she was with Just Incredible and Lance Storm, Francine was, and they were feuding with like Tommy Dreamer and like Raven, and they had Balula. So those two groups like were So anytime they fight, Joey Styles, cat fight. So, but I digress. Thank you for reminding me of those women too, Corin, or however you say your name. If I'm mispronouncing it again, sorry. But Chyna comes in and she starts wrestling dudes. And a lot of people didn't expect that. They never saw a female wrestler wrestling a guy. The only time you saw a guy and a girl wrestle was when Andy Kaufman would be the intergender champion of the world back in the 80s and would wrestle women. So that's the only time you would see a man wrestle a woman. But Chyna comes along and she changes the whole game. Chyna changes the whole playing field of professional wrestling in the mid to late 90s. And that's just challenging men. She was the first woman to enter a Royal Rumble. She was the first woman to ever win the Intercontinental Championship. And it's a shame that she's not as an individual in the Hall of Fame as an individual. She had to go in there as a group. And I know the controversy that surrounds all of that about, hey, there's some backstage drama with her, Hunter, and Stephanie, but that should deteriorate from everything. And she should be allowed in the Hall of Fame as an individual. She did change a lot. She transcended professional wrestling when she got in there. She wasn't just the bodyguard between Shawn and Triple H for DX. She got in there, wrestled, and she did awesome. Then you kind of fast forward a little later in the 90s, early 90s, mid 2000s. Then you get women to wrestle. Oliver says, I think since Triple H take over, I think next 5 years, Chyna will be in there. I agree. I think now that Hunter is in charge of, creative and all that stuff, and kind of and even The Rock, I think, I agree, Davis. I wish Chyna was still around too. She might still be in the ring if she was still around. But I do think with Hunter in charge of creative and Dwayne Johnson on the board at TKO, there would be no doubt in me that Chyna would be inducted in the Hall of Fame in the next, I wouldn't even say 5. I'm going to say the next 2 to 3. Because I think you look to next year, possibility of Chyna being inducted in the Hall of Fame next year, which would be great. She deserves to be in there on her own. And I think it's honorable. I think it's the right thing to do instead of putting her in a group. I mean, you look at someone like a Ric Flair. Ric Flair was inducted not once, but I think 2 or 3 times once with, himself, and then the second time with the Four Horsemen. So if he can get it in twice as a group and an individual, I don't see why China wouldn't be able to get in there twice with the group and by herself. Davis, her last match was in TNA, believe it or not. Yes, I remember that. It was kind of a rough match that she had, but yes, it was her last match, I believe, in 2010. 2011 was her last match in TNA. That was her last time she was in a ring. I know she went on to do other things after that, i.e. adult content. So she went on to do that. But I think within the next few years, I think you're going to see China inducted in the Hall of Fame. And it's rightly due. It is a rightly due thing that she gets inducted in the Hall of Fame. But moving on. We get to the later 99s, 2000s. And you get these two women who just steal everything. Trish Stratus and Lita. So you get Trish Stratus and Lita come in there. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Let's go back to this real quick. I think Tony Khan versus EVP Future Plan for All In London. Who knows? I mean, I don't think Tony Khan's going to wrestle, but he can put a team together to represent him. And you look at someone, you put a team together. It could be someone like Kenny Omega if he's healthy, then a possible, Hangman Page joining Kenny Omega, and then maybe a Will Ospreay can jump in there, and then you got to have a fourth one, which could be, I've mentioned it before, it could be a surprise. Which is, if you've watched Tuesday's Talk Canada, I mentioned I'd love to see Luchasaurus kind of turn face, because you haven't seen the patriarchy in a while. I agree. Yeah, MJF, Omega, and FTR versus the Elite, that would be good. And I almost forgot MJF. MJF could be in the place of Will Ospreay in that. Or you could have Omega, Ospreay, MJF, and Luchasaurus. Because remember, who's Jack Perry's last tag partner? Luchasaurus. And you haven't seen patriarchy in a while since Christian lost the title. So you could go that route as well. But very good planning ahead for all. And Tony can put that team together against the Elite. But going back to what we're talking about, you had Lita and Trish come in, and Lita and Trish really changed the game. They were the first two women to headline main event a WWE Raw in its history. Of course, since then you've had multiple women main event a Raw, obviously. I mean, obviously, just past week you just had the women main event in a Battle Royal, but they set that trend with their main event on Raw. Trish and Lita became the newer age trendsetters. And I highly recommend everybody to watch a series on Peacock called it's something about WWE, but it's Ruthless Aggression. That was the Ruthless Aggression series on Peacock. And they talk about the women's division. And they mention that match. They mention the women at the time on the roster. And especially since WCW went under, a lot of the women went over to WWE, but a lot of them were there already, like Trish Stratus, like Alita, like a Molly Holly. They were already over in WWE. And then you had women from WCW, but Lita and Trish really headlining that Raw really set the trend of women's professional wrestling in WWE. I mean, they literally laid the grounds, and look at them now. They actually have appeared multiple times over the last couple of years and had matches. I've been watching the Ruthless Aggression series. I don't think I've gotten to that one yet. Oh, you're going to love that one. Just the fact that they talk. And the one person that trained them through, believe it or not, if you guys don't believe it, the one producer and trainer that set that going forward, Fit Finlay. Fit Finlay was the guy to tell the women, hey, this is what we're doing. I'm going to push you. Like, you watch that episode of the Ruthless Aggression on Peacock, and they talk about Fit. They tell them, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Fit Finlay. Let's see. If it wasn't for Trish and Lita, I don't think the women would be doing some of the ladder stuff nowadays. That's true. Yeah, and I would also add Victoria to that. Add Victoria to that status too, because you got to remember her and Trish Stratus. I believe it was at SummerSlam or something like that, they had that street fight, where I believe Victoria broke her nose on a trash can. And so you got to add Victoria to that list as well with Trish and Lita, of changing the game of almost like street fight-esque like matches for the women. Those three definitely put their bodies on the line for it, because then you got to you still had like the bra and panties matches, and you had the term divas come around in the mid 2000s, and so those two kind of set the trend. They didn't want to be known as divas. I was just about to mention Molly Holly and Victoria. Yeah, no, I mean you can't leave those couple names out of that era, or Dawn Marie or Tori Wilson, because they all Stacy Keibler. You can't leave any of those names out for that era, because those women, regardless if they were wrestling in the ring, or wrestling in the ring, or just being pretty faces, they all had something to do with raising the bar in the women's division and actually pushing themselves. Because you got to remember, Tori Wilson and Dawn Marie and all them, they still wrestled. They were all trained by Fit Finlay during that time. Jazz. Thank you for bringing up Jazz, Davis. I almost forgot Jazz. Good Lord. That's another name I couldn't remember. Good Lord. But yeah, no. I think you got to bring those names into it. Yes, thank you, Ramit. Yes, Sable, the Sable Bob. She actually stayed on for even after the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression. I think she was in WWE until like 2004, 2005. Then you started getting to the Divas age and doing that Divas term. And they kind of took a step back during that time with the Divas. They were so more of pretty faces, but then you had the exceptions of that group. Someone like a Mickie James coming in, and Beth Phoenix, and a Melina, and Michelle. Oh my God, I couldn't remember her last name. Undertaker's wife, Michelle. Yeah, you guys know who I'm talking about. But someone comments it, it'll hit my head, and I'll be like, that was it, And so, Michelle McCool, there it was. Found it. Yep. Nobody even commented it, and it came right to my head. When they had LaCool, Layla and all that. I mean, those women were still putting in the work, but they kind of took a step back with everything else, and they really didn't give them an opportunity to show what they were doing. Yes. Thank you, Davis. Yeah. It just came to me as you were putting it out there. So thank you. But yeah, no, they weren't giving those women a chance at all, Yes, yeah, I remember that. Yes, that was a big moment in women's wrestling too, with Medusa coming over to WCW and dropping the title in the garbage. That was a big moment in wrestling and just women's wrestling too, because Vince had already lost three of his biggest names not three biggest, but three of the names that he didn't want to go to WCW, but it happened. But getting back to Sable and all that and the Divas. You still had those exceptions. You have a Beth Phoenix, Michelle McCool, Melina coming in with, Eminem. And, you still had, even when you revived ECW, you had some women on there that looked like they could wrestle but weren't given the chance. So, and, and someone like, her name escapes me. I'm sorry. Probably won't be. Michelle, Mickey, Eve, yep, Eve Torres, Kelly, and Beth, yes. I agree, Davis. Those were probably the biggest names that stuck out in that division during that time for the Divas, that Divas era. And look at Mickie James now, too. Mickie James has come a long way for that. And so it's so great to see her graduate from that Divas era and now just be a woman wrestler, being termed as a woman wrestler. And so from that Diva age, you had the crowd wanting more women's wrestling in a more fashionable way, like the men's. So then that whole era of Give Divas a Chance came out. And so you had Give Divas a Chance come out, and people, yes, Davis, yes, Melina was one of your favorite. I loved Melina. She was really athletic. Ashley, yeah, Maseo, Yes, she was really good. I wish, I wish she wasn't gone at a young age. I wish she had a better time in her career at WWE. I wish she would have won one title, considering she was one of the Diva Search winners, and she didn't get that opportunity. Um, I mean, someone like a Caitlyn too. Caitlyn, won the Divas title, and if you look at Caitlyn now, she is buff. She is huge as hell, and I think she's trying to make a return to professional wrestling, which would be good. I think that would be perfect for her. I think she's in great shape. She looks strong as hell. Love to see her come back and go at it in the ring one more time. But you had this whole era of give Divas a chance. And this was the time when the Bella Twins came through, and they had NXT redeveloped in 2010, and they actually had with the females change it up. You brought in Charlotte Flair, you brought in Sasha Banks, you brought in Alexa Bliss. This was like the 2010 to 2015 era of bringing those women in, and they kind of changed the game. They started having matches on NXT with like Bayley and Sasha doing Iron Women matches, or the first ever Hell in a Cell match they had with Charlotte and Sasha Banks. So those women coming in after the whole Divas age, where it became actual women's division again, they actually did very well of revamping that. And those women stepped up. I mean, you should when you got someone like a Charlotte Flair in there, whose father is, regardless of my opinions of him, is one of the most legendary wrestlers in professional wrestling. Well, let's see. Oliver says, I've been watching a show called Breaking Grounds on Peacock, and there were quite a few women who really proved themselves. Bayley and Sasha, to name a few. Yeah. I think I remember. I haven't watched that series yet, but yes, I think I'll have to give that a chance to watch. But then run it. WCW, WWE Attitude Era. Only viewers watch WWF for Sable. I mean, Sable was one of those people, so to kind of jump into it and all that stuff. Oh wow, 30 minutes in. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's great. I've just been going, and
oh wow, just you so far?
It's just been me, just going live so far, Aimer.
I got to know this late.
So, but welcome, Aimer. We are talking women's professional wrestling. I've already covered pretty much from the golden era of women's wrestling is more of like their an attraction. Yep. And at the men's shows. So now we're getting to the post Divas era. If I can ask you, Aimer, out of the eras of women's wrestling, which one did you think had the most influence on what we see today in women's pro wrestling?
Oh, okay. That's a really interesting question. If I were to say, I would say kind of the era. Probably the era where, coincidentally, I was, working as a contractor for WWE. The era where the skill, I guess you could say, of the women was starting to come into its own. That's what I think. Where we had people like Trish Stratus when she had developed those skills. Lita, obviously, Jazz, Victoria. That era, I think, most influences what we see today. I really think it's a shame, and that's probably where we're heading now as you're talking about it. It's a shame that it kind of went the other way from that. It really is.
Yeah, no,
have you already covered that part? Have you already covered that time period?
Of what?
Have you already covered that time period and what you were talking about?
Yeah, no, we did. And I actually mentioned that the first women's main event with Trish and Lita really paved the way for what we see today of the women's wrestling. And I'd even mentioned that we still see Trish and Lita around these last couple of years, and everything like that. Jason says, hey, Aimer, welcome.
Thanks.
But yeah, no, we covered that. And so
that's great. I mean, all I would add to that is just, I don't know if people, I've already sort of told the story a little bit, but I was actually fortunate enough to spend some time privately talking with Trish Stratus. And I don't remember everything we talked about, but I do remember some things certainly. And she really put over, and I think this was really the key thing that helped at that time. The one guy she really put over was Fit Finlay, and the amount of time that he spent with the women, just really, really focused time helping them get better in ways that I'm sure that nobody else, woman or man, had done previously. In terms of look, ladies, here's what you need to do in order to take things up to the next level. And Trish mentioned him quite a bit in terms of like things that she had learned from him. Specifically. And I think it really, really came across. And it's really a shame that it kind of went in a different direction after a lot of those ladies left WWF and WWE, I guess it had become. And then, Vince McMahon changed his mind and he said, well, I want these dollies and I want these divas. And I guess that's kind of where we're headed.
Yeah. Real quick before I respond to answer Jason, Connor's dealing with some personal stuff. We wish him well. He'll be back. Sometime either this weekend for the reactions or next week, but we wish him well. That's why we're not with Connor. Connor, we love you, buddy.
Yep.
But like Amer was saying, yes, I mentioned earlier about a show on Peacock called Ruthless Aggression, and they talk about the Ruthless Aggression era, and they had talked about the women's division, and they did talk about Fit Finlay there, and how much they love and respect him because he's the one that actually pushed the women's division and wanted them to be successful and said, we need this time. I think it will work. So Fit actually put his foot forward and fought for those women in that era to kind of be on the forefront and show their skills.
100%. And he gave them the skills and he told them, this is what you need to focus on, ladies. You're already beautiful. You already have the look, right? This is what you need to do. And I do remember Trish talking about stuff like that.
Yeah. And
for those who haven't heard it, yes, true story. On My Children's Lives, I have been alone with Trish Stratus in her bedroom. True story.
Nothing happened. It was professional.
Nothing happened.
It was professional, folks.
Yes,
okay, get out of the gutter. Get your minds out of the gutter. But yeah, no. Then we move on. Right now we're in the era of the post Diva stuff and the revolution. To basically give divas a chance and push into the women's division. And I mentioned some of the names in there: the Becky Lynches, the Sasha Banks, the Baileys, the Charlotte Flairs, the Asukas. The Bella Twins were part of that, regardless of people's opinions of them. They were part of that revolution. So you had all these women come through the revolution time, and NXT has changed up in their women's division. Then in the 2010s, 2015s, they were more on the forefront. And they had women's Iron Women matches.
Yep.
So, we talk about that era. What really stuck out to you from that era, the post Divas, more women's revolution era?
I think just I don't quite know how to say it. I think it went in such a cycle that to me it was just so great that now suddenly there's this generation, for lack of a better word, of women who are like, yeah, I can do that, having watched Trish and Lita and that generation of ladies. And then, 14, 15 years later, when, that generation of women was ready to become a part of WWE, of wrestling overall. It's not just WWE, it's all over. Just the proliferation of talent, to me, is what really stands out. There are so many talented women. It's just amazing. And the opportunities that they've gotten because those women paved the way. And then, the cycle shifted for a while, but then it kind of came back. And it was really great to see.
Yeah. And really you have to thank that revolution for basically giving us what we have now. With the women in WWE. You have now the Tiffany Strattons, the Roxanne Perez's, the Dakota Kais, the Raquel Rodriguez's, the Liv Morgans. That women's revolution kind of gave us what we have. And a Rhea Ripley, These are names you cannot say if it wasn't for that women's revolution and the opportunities that they gave. And they actually had that Mae Young tournament. How did you
was
feel?
huge.
I loved it. I thought it was a great idea to give women
I
that.
saw it because they showed it on the WWE Network. Sorry, I mean, they showed it on the WWE Network a few weeks ago. I don't remember exactly when, but I sat with my mom and I watched the whole thing, and she was just shocked. Like, that's Rhea Ripley? You know, like, that's Becky Lynch? Like, really? They look so different now. I'm like, yeah, but this is how it started. And Triple H and Shawn Michaels and guys who, you know, had been in that locker room at the time, back in the, you know, the Trish and Lita time, and had worked with Fit Finlay and had seen what he had done and appreciated the work that he had put in and the women had put in, are like, we have to do this. We have enough talent now to make this work. And big props to those guys.
Yeah, and you also, you know what, and it's kind of a situation-wise right now, it's weird to bring up her name, but you have to thank someone like a Stephanie McMahon.
Yes.
Stephanie McMahon pushed for that women's revolution. If it wasn't for her, the Bella Twins, and even though she's bitter about it, Ronda Rousey, you do have to name some names that kind of pushed for it, you know. But Stephanie was at that forefront because remember, she's grown up in WWE, you know, and she was in that era of when women main evented the main event. And I mentioned that. I mean, now we have it nowadays. I mean, Monday we just had the Women's Battle Royal main event, Monday Night Raw. So now you're getting more of that opportunity for the women wrestlers. Now, I want to move on to other companies too. You know, I've stuck with WWE in the golden era of just women wrestling in general. Is there any last take you'd like to have on how we look at the women's division in WWE right now compared to what it was?
The only take that something that's interesting to me is that like with the Women's Battle Royal last week, I know that there was a lot of discussion about, oh my gosh, that's so predictable and this and that. And it struck me that, you know what? We're talking about, like, had it been a men's event, there would have been the same kind of feedback. Now, the wonderful thing that I took away from that, doesn't matter whether it's a men's event or a women's event, right? That's how far it's come. And that's actually really impressive. That, you know, nobody just dismisses it, oh, that was unimportant. No, people are talking about it the same way they would talk about a men's main event that was structured the same way. Right. And that to me is really, really impressive and speaks to the effort of people like you mentioned, like Stephanie McMahon, like Triple H, like all of those people who saw it. And then, you know, just by necessity, we're still talking WWE, you know, had to look for those opportunities when they could push something through and say, hey, Vince, look over there, and did this, right? And that was necessity, right? But they had been around long enough and knew when to take advantage of those opportunities, and they did it. And I'm very glad that they did.
Yeah. Rami, I'm going to take a shot at this, but I doubt any of those people are going to sign with AEW. AEW's already got a full roster and with their women, and they've got a lot of stuff going. I just don't see them having room for that. That's just my take.
Emma might be a possibility.
Emma, maybe.
Maybe. Ronda Rousey only because, you know, if she's got a friend, like she showed up at ROH that one time, right, for Marina Shafir. And if she has a friend, a buddy, it's like, oh, yeah, fine, I'll show up for an event here or there. But, you know, Ronda, obviously, we're finding out now, was not really that committed to WWE, you know, in the sense that some of these other women are. And Mandy, I don't see Mandy Rose wanting to bother. She's doing just fine doing what she's doing.
She's making money.
Yes.
But now we move on to another company that I love and I've loved for a while, and that's TNA. It's a very underrated promotion. And when it started in the early 2000s, again, you didn't really have a lot of the women wrestling, but you had them come to the ring as valets. But then you started getting other women come in. Like then you in the mid to late 2000s, you had like the ODBs, the Awesome Kongs. You had I keep forgetting her name. She's like a 7-time Knockouts champion, and she was in WWE for a while. Who? Gail Kim, thank you. I couldn't even think of it. And I can see her husband because he's the cook on TV in Basketball. The restaurant.
Toronto girl, that's why.
You had them come in, and then you had someone like a Daphne come in, you know. Yep. So you had all these women come in, and then the beautiful people, and they changed the entire landscape of the women's division in TNA. You know, they really didn't have a women's division until like 2005. Then they were called the Knockouts, you know, obviously TNA and all that. Yep. So, you had those women come in and actually change everything.
Yes.
I want to get your thoughts on the earlier days of TNA women's wrestling and who really stuck out to you as like one of those women that are like, oh wow, like she's good. Why didn't she sign to a big promotion?
Yeah. I didn't watch that much TNA back in the day. I followed it, and I'm familiar with all of these people. I thought I really thought that Awesome Kong, and she did get some time, in WWE, just because of her look, and that's the kind of performer that Vince McMahon would want. The other ones had skill, but at the time, the whole like I said, it was on that cycle where the skill thing wasn't so important, and it was more about the look. And so I thought, and I was glad to see when Awesome Kong came in, because I'm like, man, she could really shake things up and turn things around. And she didn't last long enough for whatever reasons. But yeah, I liked her. I love from the little that I did see and the little I did pay attention to. ODB was fantastic.
Yes.
She really was, because she got it right in a way that a lot of these other ladies didn't. They tried. I think they sincerely tried. It's not that they were bad, but ODB just got it, and she was different and she was unique and she used that to connect with the audience, and that's what it's all about, in my opinion.
I agree with Ron in the comments. TNA was Gail Kim's house. She was the most decorated TNA Knockouts champion. Jason, I agree. Awesome Kong was awesome in TNA.
Yes, she was.
Her and I think her manager was like Sharita or something like that. Was the name of her? Like she had the mask on, but it was cheerleader Melissa underneath there. Another underrated women's wrestler that played that character. But I mean, you look at someone like a Daphne, and I believe might have been Awesome Kong. I can't remember, but they were involved in the very first Monsters Ball match for the women. That was more of the no holds barred match for the men. Was the Monsters Ball, obviously created by Abyss in TNA, but Daphne, because she was like kind of associated with that, she brought it over to the women's division, and she was involved in the very first, Monster Ball for the women's match, so it was really crazy just to see that. And that goes back to the whole, now we're seeing a lot of the no DQ, the no disqualification street fights we see in AEW. I mean, that kind of stems from the street fights we saw in WWE in the early days, and even the Monster Balls in TNA. So I think every group takes from each other and kind of sets a new standard for their division.
I agree. WWE never did that until TNA started doing stuff like that, right? They had all sorts of just the straight up matches and divas matches, and of course all of the nonsense bra and panties matches and all of that kind of stuff. But that level, and again, as I pointed out, now if there's going to be a steel cage match with the women, like 20 years ago, it'd be like, oh gee, really? You're going to do that? Now it's just like, oh yeah, steel cage, sure, why the hell not, right?
Yeah,
it's like it's nothing now.
Yeah. Like I said, before you came on, I had mentioned like the women's division, WWE changed it with the first women's Hell in a Cell match, the first women's Iron Woman match, But TNA really stepped it up too with that Monster Ball with Daphne, and I want to say it was Awesome Kong she wrestled against. I can't remember if it was, but Daphne was the first one. I know that for sure because Daphne's character in TNA was awesome. I miss her already. Gone too soon. One of those wrestlers gone too soon. So, but the division had changed over time too, because then you had other women coming in that were in other companies. Then you had Melina come in, and then Mickie James came over and kind of rewrote that whole Knockouts division. You had someone like Allie come in and kind of change it up. So they weren't just pretty faces; they were also trying to wrestle too.
Yes, that's right.
And so TNA was trying to get back to that route, and then you had ODB still going at it where she was going, and then you fast forward to now. And I had said at the beginning of this episode tonight, the best division, women's division in all pro wrestling is TNA. I have no doubt about that. They have everything to a T right now, to their Knockouts champion, Jordynne Grace, to Tasha Steelz, to, oh my God, her name just left me. She's like, she won the Extreme X match this year, and I can't remember her name. but I can see her name. I mean, they had Lady Frost over there. You know, you have Decay over there. You know, Rosemary and Havoc. You got Killer Kelly over there.
Mhm.
You know, you got Masha Slamovich over there. That is a good division right now over in TNA. They have some really good women wrestlers over there. How do you feel about that newer age division that they have now?
They definitely do have it. I don't know a lot about a lot of these women, but from the brief snippets I see online and things like that, when they go out there, like I said, they give off a vibe to me that these women are devoted to their craft and they're serious about what they're doing. Unfortunately, I think it is what it is. In TNA, obviously, the connection to the audience is not the forefront. It's more about the action, and that's just out of necessity. That's fine. But you know what? These women are going out there and maximizing their minutes, given what they have, and that's what it's all about. I definitely do appreciate that. I don't think anybody who's in the know would disagree that TNA is doing a way better job than AEW is with the women. And you could argue. I mean, WWE is playing a different game, so to speak, with their women's division. But yeah, like in terms of talent, it's all there in TNA for sure.
Right, and I'm just going over the roster again for the women over there. I mean, you have Alicia Edwards, Ash by Elegance, who was actually Dana Brooks over in WWE. She's over there now. You got Danny Luna, Decay. Gail Kim's still over there. Giselle Shaw was the one I was thinking of. Giselle Shaw is very, very athletic, very good wrestler. But you look at it, the division now, and I'm very enthralled by the TNA women's division, how they can keep storylines going. With the storyline of Mickie James' last rodeo when she was over there and she finished up, when is she done? When is she going to lose the title? Blah, blah, blah. So they had that story going and everything.
Yes.
But we shift over from that to now to AEW.
Yeah.
Now, AEW is freshly new, 5 years. And since they started it, the women's division has grown. Obviously, the very first woman signed Britt Baker, which we hope she comes back soon. I'd love to see her back on TV here soon. And then you get someone like a Chris Statlander. At the time, you had Jade Cargill, who's now over in WWE, but you had her over there. You had a stacked women's division when you started it out. Then you have someone like a Serena Deeb. So, and now it just continues to grow. Now you got Mercedes Moné in there. Willow Nightingale is your TBS champion. You got someone like a Toni Storm who's doing magnificent work.
I agree.
I just think it's so overstacked that they're not really utilizing it. That's my only issue with the women's division AEW. Would you agree?
I would actually use a word that now it's bloat, right? And the men's roster is bloated too. But yeah, now it's way more visible on the women's roster. And again, for one reason or another, and this is the same on the men's side, a lot of the women are having a tough time with it. And Mercedes, we can talk more about her. But you know what? They have to be produced. They really, really do. And I know that that's almost like a dirty word for a lot of the AEW talent, right? But, to kind of make a point, it's not that Phil Jackson, to use a sports analogy, was a better basketball player than Michael Jordan, right? Of course not. That's just stupid. But Michael Jordan benefited from having Phil Jackson as a coach. So did Kobe Bryant. So did Shaquille O'Neal, right? And why? Because at even the most basic level, you forget Phil Jackson, any coach, the coach can see things that you can't see. I don't care how good a performer you are. Okay, you can always benefit by somebody watching and looking for what you can't see. And a lot of the women and the men, we're talking about the women here specifically, but that's it. I just see in AEW so many women, since that's what we're talking about, who could really benefit from just somebody stepping up, like a Fit Finlay, and saying, here, lady, I see what you're doing, and that's great. Keep doing that. But here's something else you need, you know? And I think that's missing. I think there are people who try. I'm sure Serena Deeb, you know, coaches them on certain things. But I hope what I'm trying to say is coming across. There's some of that, some of these women I think really do have it. And somebody just needs to show them where to put it.
Right, and I agree. And someone that we keep bringing up, and I think really changed the game in the women's division TNA was Scott D'Amore.
Yes.
I think Scott D'Amore did so well running that women's division that we see where it's at now. Right. And I don't think because it was kind of his baby that I don't think a lot of people will mess with it and just let it go as it's going. And obviously like that, and you left it in good hands with like a Tommy Dreamer and a Santino Morella over there. You know, those guys are probably producers as well as on-screen presence. They're probably backstage producers there. They're in good hands with that division. They know what Scott wanted. You know, someone like an Eric Young who's still performing but still backstage. I'm sure he's like, this is what we got. So you bring in a Scott D'Amore over to AEW, not just for the men's division, but he knows how to run a women's division. And you bring him over, I think you can see a lot of change. You're starting to see it a little bit right now as far as like the writing goes. Once they brought that new female writer over for the women's division, you kind of see stories start developing now in the women's division. I just want to see it pushed to that next level. And I think someone like a Scott D'Amore can do it. Would you agree?
I would agree. I think every little bit will help. I think Jennifer Pepperman is the woman who you're talking about. And I think, you know, she's a writer, and you know, she can write promos and she can draft the stories and that sort of thing. But again, there's that other part where somebody's got to help them execute it, right? You can write the best story, right? But again, and I'll just use this as an example because this is what's kind of happening, at least as I see it. You know, sorry, if Mercedes isn't going to go out there and make it impactful, then, you know, I don't care how great the story is, right? It's not going to work. And that's what we've seen happen so far. You know,
and
this is an example.
Yeah, and I think you could say the same thing for the Ring of Honor women's division. If we're talking with AEW women's division, you could see it like, yes, Billy Starks is the TV champion, and you got Athena as the longest reigning women's champion over there, but you got to build those challengers for these women. And I don't think Ring of Honor is doing that to the point that they need to. So do you think that if they bring in Scott D'Amore, do you think they can put enough trust in him to do that with both the AEW women's roster and the Ring of Honor women's roster?
I think they can. I don't think Tony Khan will, but I think he definitely can if he's allowed to do it, right? Yeah, sure he could.
And from that roster, if you could choose, we haven't gotten this question, but from both the AEW Ring of Honor women's rosters, who do you see that can use the most help as far as elevating their character or their wrestling going right now?
I may be a little bit biased, but my gut it still tells me the answer is Sky Blue. I don't know what it is, but I just watch her and just the little things. I really do feel that she has it, right? And somebody just needs to tell her where to put it, because just little things that I see from her, just her facial expressions and things like that. I think she could. A lot like Statlander, you know, Willow Nightingale. A lot of them can definitely benefit, but they are they're certainly more seasoned from the in-ring action side of things, right? But just in terms of like character work, I think Sky Blue could totally benefit from having somebody like that just help her out, just little things. I think I've said it before on another show. Put Sky Blue in the Performance Center, let her spend an hour with William Regal every day, and in 3 months, you will have the next superstar. That's probably true for a lot of other women too. But she stands up to me in that regard.
Yeah, I think Sky Blue is one of those talents that she's starting to get there, but she needs that next help step level up. And I think pairing her with Julia was kind of weird because you're like, she's still new too. You know, I understand you're trying to pair the two new people together, kind of get them. But my thought is, if you're pairing her with Julia, that means you're also pairing her with the House of Black. And you
Yeah.
look at all those people in that group with with Malachi and Brody and Buddy. Those three have been guiding Julia so well, especially Brody. If you watch any of some of the blogs that some of these people do, like Brody and Julia are like brother and sister. Like Brody, if you watch any interviews with Julia, Julia says Brody's like my big brother. He has guided me through everything in my career right now. Right. So you bring someone like a Sky Blue in that group, and you've got someone like a Brody King guiding her. I think she'll be fine, but I agree with you. She also needs that more work, to where she can get to that next level.
And again, both of them are so young that they'll take it and they'll do it. Like, I mean, and it is what it is. Chris Statlander has been around long enough that she's developed habits, good or bad, whatever. But she's already, a step beyond where those two are, right? So they could take it, and just one day the light will turn on with them, and yeah. So even some of these other ladies, very, very talented, like Harley Cameron, Mariah May, and others who are in ROH, right? They've just been around the block a few times. So it's not that they wouldn't be as receptive to that kind of advice. It's just that, the younger ladies are just blank slates, and could just really, move on. The other ones, you have to be like, okay, I got to find some way to help you, but to fit into what you are already, it'll be more like that.
Yeah. I want to hit this comment that Oliver left about Deonna becoming women's champ eventually. She's been in the better signing than Monet. I will agree with you on that, Oliver.
Yes.
If you watch some of her stuff in TNA, fantastic work. Some of the best work I've seen in ring. I mean, and then she was brought on to do that unification match for the, the championship with Mercedes Martinez on Dynamite, and it was awesome. I think it was a Dynamite or it was a Rampage. I can't remember which one, but they main evented it, and they did very well with it. I
think it was a Rampage. Yeah.
It was like a 15-minute match. They both wrestled to a T, and so. I don't know if Deonna would become women's champion. I can see her maybe going after the TBS title. I am hoping that they don't push Deonna back from winning a title because she works so well. We're still waiting for that heel turn because I do feel they're turning her heel. I had mentioned that a couple times that I've read that they're trying to turn Deonna heel just because they don't have a lot of heel women wrestlers right now. So trying to get Deonna turn heel would be the right way. Obviously she's got this match with Thunder Rosa coming up this weekend, so that might be a time where you sell her as the heel. But that might be, that almost be like a Becky Lynch turning heel, where she'll get more cheers as a heel than she should. That's what I big fear on. Would you agree?
I would agree, but that because that's the nature of the AEW audience, and B, just the way that matches and angles are structured in AEW and ROH. It's not really about faces and heels. It really isn't so much. The thing about Deonna Purrazzo, I mean, I agree with you. She deserves championships, but you know what? The more I think about her and the more I watch her, here's who I think of. Remember Rick Rude? Mm-hmm. Remember Kurt Hennig? Remember Owen Hart? How many championships did those guys win? Not a heck of a lot, right? You know why? You know why, right? Because they were so valuable at putting over and and giving a shine to who the promoter thought would make more money.
And that's mid-card status. That is mid-card wrestler status to a
Kurt Hennig was there to bump and make guys look good. Rick Rude got paid for an entire year to make the Ultimate Warrior look good. He did, right? And I worry. I don't think this is going to happen in AEW because, it appears to be that Tony Khan doesn't really think that way. But, that is her skill set. She is one of those who can make anybody look good.
But that's never a bad thing. If you've got someone that can work, I mean, we talk about it, the mid-card wrestlers, like you just mentioned, a Rick Rude, Mr. Perfect, Owen Hart. Those are mid-card guys that put on hell of matches at mid-card.
Absolutely.
Won some mid-card titles, never won the big one, but they put the work in the ring.
100%. They were glue guys, right? You cannot build a successful Fed without those guys. You absolutely can't. And that's kind of where I see, things going for Deonna Purrazzo at this point. I hope that she is able to, achieve more success and achieve some more championships. But again, I selfishly, as a promoter, as a booker, I would say I really, really need her to make Toni Storm look good, because that'll make me more money. I need you to make Britt Baker look good, because I think I need her. I need her elevated. That's what I would do. I think that's just human nature.
And for me, that's almost like because of who Thunder Rosa is. Thunder Rosa actually came in and changed a little bit of the vision too.
Yes.
That this feud with her and Deonna, that they're saying we need you to push Thunder a little bit more too, because Thunder has been part of our crew for a long time. She's very valuable, but she's also very what's the word I'm looking for? She's very God, I can't even think of the word right now. She's very when someone's like, this is my promotion, like very I can't even think of the word, Amer. It'll come to me, but she's very devoted. Thank you. She's devoted to AEW. She's a devoted wrestler to the AEW. That's hers right now. Even though she's still doing a little bit of the Mission Wrestling that she runs, she's more devoted to AEW than anything else. I mean, hell, when she was out with injury, she was doing Spanish commentary. Like at Collision, she was still there regardless. And so I think that's where you see it there. But there's some wrestlers we haven't talked about yet, and I think we should get to them because they are important. They're shown on AEW. They're shown WWE. I think there's maybe a few of them in TNA, but I haven't seen a lot of them. But they're mainly focused, and these are the Joshi female wrestlers. Okay. The Japanese wrestlers. You got someone like Rio and Ashida and Mina Shirakawa. Shirakawa. And then in WWE, you've got the Asuka, you have the Kairi Sane, you have Io Sky, you got all these women. They're starting to get noticed by American audiences because American audiences didn't really know what Joshi women wrestlers were. Yep. But then you watch some of the women wrestling in Japan and you're like, oh, they go hard. they are brutal. Would you like to see more of that in the women's division with these Joshi wrestlers coming in and bringing that kind of intensity to it?
I'm a little torn about it in the sense that, again, I'm always thinking that, regardless of which promotion we're talking about, it really is about making a connection with the audience. Even Io Sky, Asuka, Kairi Sane are having some difficulty with that in WWE. They need a mouthpiece like Bayley or Dakota Kai, or else they're never going to be able to, make that connection with that audience. It's a little bit easier in, places like AEW or ROH, where that, there's not so much emphasis put on that. And, they can let some of the in-ring action speak for itself. I think that the most important thing for them is going to be that they have to be put in favorable spots that will, accentuate the positives and hide some of the negatives. Let's be realistic. Most of these women are smaller, okay? It does not make sense. It would not benefit anyone for, perfect example, Riho against Toni Storm. Physically, that's a mismatch, right? WWE does it too, and not with Joshi's, but Ivy Nile versus Rhea Ripley. I mean, come on, that's bad. But what they did this week, Mina Shirakawa against Anna Jay. Hey, that was a decent match, wasn't it? Yeah. You know why? Because physically, these women are kind of on an equal playing field, right? And I know that they try to do a lot. Like I think I've seen matches like Emi Sakura against Hikaru Shida and whatever. And again, level playing field, right? So if the other federations, including WWE and AEW, can do that, right? Hey, okay, if we want to make this work, we're going to have to make these ladies look good, and you have to be, I think, fair to them and realistic, and be able to say, you know what? That didn't look so good. We shouldn't do that. We got to find another way to make Riho look good. That's a tough one because Riho really is physically smaller and looks so young and all of that kind of stuff. But it can be done. Just got to find the right kind of opponents for her.
Right.
That's
And
awesome.
I will go on this on what Corinne said about Asia Kong. If you haven't watched Asia Kong, she is a monster in Joshi.
Yeah.
She's a beat. I would love to see her and Bull Nakano in her prime wrestle each other. That's like
Yes.
watching Kane wrestling Braun Strowman. It is it's
Yeah.
neat everywhere in the ring. But I agree with the Joshi wrestlers, and it's also hard to break that barrier with American audiences.
It is.
I mean, we're still having that time with Shinsuke Nakamura, and someone like Takesha, and they're still trying to break that barrier. But you bring in someone that the fans love, like an Okada or Shibata. They love these guys, regardless of Okada being a heel. But the Joshi women, like, there's some talent there, and someone that's really sticking out that obviously is now WWE is Julia. Julia is like that new prime Joshi wrestler that's got it all. She's got the in-ring skills. She's got the looks. She's got the almost like the marketability of what you want a Joshi wrestler to look like.
Doesn't she speak English though?
She does speak English.
Okay, well, there you go.
She's actually really good with English as well. Okay. She's not, a lot of these women that, the Joshi wrestlers that stumble over, but some of them are getting better, but I also love the incorporation some of these companies are doing with the subtitles. You look at like WWE, when EO was talking about Bayley before their match at WrestleMania, they had the subtitles.
Yes.
When Shinsuke was feuding with, Cody.
The anime promos were awesome.
Subtitles. They just did subtitles so the audience knows what they're saying in their language. So I feel like, but AEW's lucky because Tashida knows it doesn't do bad English. She can speak. Okada is a really good pronunciation, regardless of his accent.
He hasn't really been able to showcase
Shibata, if you've watched Shibata's couple of promos recently, he's very good at kind of pronunciating with his accent.
But he's talking through his phone now, isn't he? Like he's using the phone.
Yeah, he is. He is.
I don't know. You probably know better than I do. Can he speak decent English? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. Maybe that's what I was thinking.
But I think the phone makes again. That's unique, right? That was funny, right? When he's doing, Renee, that heart thing is really, really like that's funny. That's different. Okay, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's different. But like some of these Joshi women wrestlers, when you bring them over to the States, you got to make sure they connect with the audience. They're still bringing eyes over from their country because those people know them over there in that country. They're like, we know them, so we'll watch this product that they're going to be a part of because we still want to support them. But you've got to make sure they connect with the American audiences as well.
And promoters have got to put them, like I said, in the right positions to do it. You can. At the very least, if you try something, there's no harm in trying, right? But if it doesn't work, then freaking don't do that again, okay? Let's do something different because it didn't work,
Yeah. So, we're starting to wind down here. We're starting to get to the hour and 15 here mark on the show. I want to get your thoughts on, what you see moving forward and which division and which promotion do you see that can have the most success going forward now for the women?
That's a tough one. I would like to say WWE only for the fact that they have a lot more options and they have the bigger platform. And if they play their cards right with what they're going to do with the draft, I think that they can take it up to another level. But I do think that other than that, I would go with potentially ROH if somehow they can break out of this idea that they have to be behind a paywall. Not just that, but find a better way to showcase that talent in the way that WWE is kind of doing with NXT. Why is Athena still in ROH? Does that make any sense to you?
Zero sense.
Zero sense. Yeah, it's silly. It really is silly to me, right? So if Tony were to think the way the WWE was thinking, why would I leave her there and not bring her up to the main roster? That kind of thinking would mean that Tiffany Stratton would still be in freaking NXT,
Yeah.
And in retrospect, obviously nobody's got a crystal ball, but gee, it might not have been nice to wait a week and have Tiffany Stratton drafted to Raw and win a battle royal this coming Monday and make her the champion?
Boy, that would honestly, that would have made more sense than giving it to Becky as the safe option.
I see it
giving it to Becky as the safe option was kind of risky.
I guess I see it both ways because I'm thinking, okay, they're going to Europe. It is a safe option. I get it. And they had kind of booked Tiffany into this thing where they need her now because they already started that angle with her and Bayley and Naomi, right? Mm-hmm. So I get it. Triple H was caught flat-footed, and I really, really, really hope that what it does is it exposes the fact that, hey, we need to make this work. We don't have enough star power on Raw. We have to fix that, right? I really do hope that they fix it. And I think that as we're kind of talking about this is another idea I had. Having a secondary title belt for the women would benefit, I think, a lot of these promotions. It would definitely benefit WWE, right? Because again, WWE also has a problem. You've got your Rhea Ripleys, but you've got your Ivy Niles and these women who are smaller. Right? Some who are not as talented, like the Maxine Dupree's or whatever, okay, we can leave her aside and, those of that ilk. But the Candice LeRae's and, ones like that who are really, really talented. I see I think of the Cruiserweight title, the Cruiserweight division in WCW from back in Nitro, right? That was so important because, and I listened actually to Eric Bischoff talk about it because I went back listening to some of his old stuff about how a lot of the cruiserweights didn't like being in that division because they felt that they were being pigeonholed. And they were to some extent, but what it did is it allowed them to showcase their skills. Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit, all of these guys. If you just put them in the ring with Hulk Hogan, come on, what's going to happen, right? But if you get them some victories, you get them some titles, you let them showcase their skills. Oh, yeah, okay. Billy Kidman against Hulk Hogan, that doesn't seem so unreasonable all of a sudden, right? I mean, backstage politics aside, but you know what I mean. If we had a secondary title that an Ivy Nile or a Candice LeRae could win, carry for a couple of months, right? And be formidable and be built up. Now suddenly, Ivy Nile versus Rhea Ripley doesn't seem so ridiculous, does it? Right? And you can do the same in AEW, I think, and you could do the same in ROH. You could probably even do the same in TNA, although I don't know whether you need it so much in TNA. Impact.
Well, and I agree. Corin has been mentioning it about, U.S. title cruiserweight. How about a TV title? Most of these women are on the TV every week.
Yep.
They're either showing backstage segments or they're in the ring doing something. They're featured every week.
TV title would be
not a TV title for the women's. I'm gonna go another step away from you. I know you said WWE, but I'm gonna stick with what we are, and that's AEW. I'd like to see AEW do something with their Ring of Honor women's division. I mentioned it that I feel like they're at a stalemate with both headlining with Athena and Billy Starks.
Yes,
this is the time where you get the title off Athena and get her back on AEW television. She's earned that right to be in that main roster right there on AEW. Then you center your whole Ring of Honor women's division around a Billy Stark. She's young. That's where you start, is with a young talent like that. You could get someone like that. You get someone special holding that Ring of Honor women's title. Maybe she doesn't get featured a lot, but maybe send Taya Valkyrie over there. Have her win the title from Athena. Have her do some stuff over there.
I thought she was over there.
Huh?
Isn't she mostly on ROH now?
She is. And that's why I'm saying, have her over there, have her win the women's title, and kind of her and Billy Starks help run that division in their ROH. And I agree with Davis. They need some really good indie women over in Ring of Honor. I think that's another thing they need to build on. They don't need to keep bringing AEW women over to Ring of Honor. You've got that roster set up. Now just focus on your Ring of Honor women's division.
Sure. Yeah.
But with that said, I think also I just want to leave this here. I know we talk about a lot of the big promotions, but guys, I know you saw it behind me. Watch some of the smaller promotions like the Wows, like the Shimmers. Like there's some good women wrestlers in those as well. So I can see them on a bigger platform in the future. Someone like a Haley J, who's on OVW and then she was featured on AEW. Now she's in WoW. She's young. She's like 19, 20. She's got a bright future ahead of her. I think she'll be really set for life. She's going to get a contract somewhere. But with that said, I want to thank you all for watching, joining us tonight. I want to thank Amer for jumping on here for the last 40 minutes with me. I appreciate it, bud.
Yeah,
I was actually holding my own pretty well, actually.
I'm sure you were.
Here's the thing. I'm also working, and this is for everybody watching right now. I'm actually trying to work on my solo podcast that I'm trying to put together. That's pop culture. So I'm trying to get a pop culture podcast going, and I'll get that started. If Connor's cool with it, I would love to promote it on here and everything like that to get you guys over there, and we can talk about anything other than wrestling as well. Whether it's movies, music, television, pop culture, whatever you guys want to talk about, that's what I'm building towards. So doing this by myself for the first 30, 35 minutes, perfect practice for it, But Amer, thank you for joining me. I'd like to thank everybody for commenting. Oliver Davis, Ramit, I think was the name. But I'd like to thank you guys all. Jason. Yes, you guys were all awesome commenting. Make sure you guys hit that like button, that share, subscribe. We're getting up there. We're getting up there with subscribers. We're keep moving. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, we're on Instagram. Our links are down below for you guys to follow us everywhere on the social media. Wednesdays we do the live reactions of Dynamite. Tuesdays we've got the Canada. Fridays we have Rampage. Saturdays we have Collision, and some Sundays when there's pay-per-views, we do the reactions to those. We got the Dynasty reactions. We also have interviews. We just had the interview with Kevin Von Erich's sons, which was great. The interviews went well there. We've got a couple of interviews coming up here soon. I'm sure stay tuned for all our socials. Connor will share all that with you. We're working on some big ones. We're definitely working on a big one too. So make sure you guys stick around for all that. And again, we thank you guys again for always joining us here. And again, Amer, thank you for jumping on, bud. It was great talking to you about this. This was a really fun topic. So make sure you guys, again, stick around for all the rest of our content, as tomorrow night we'll do our live Rampage reaction. So again, thank you all. And if there's nothing else,